Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna. You're watching A News. Let's see the top stories this hour. The US and Iran exchange fresh missiles and drone strikes, jeopardizing a new ceasefire agreement. The United States hosts a fourth round of peace talks with Israel and Lebanon. And Ukraine strikes St. Petersburg hours before Russian President Vladimir Putin's economic forum in the city. A fragile ceasefire between Iran and the United States is under growing pressure after fresh missile and drone attacks across the Gulf. While most of the projectiles were intercepted, the latest exchange highlights how far both sides remain from turning a temporary truce into a lasting agreement. Here's more.
Gulf tensions escalated sharply on Wednesday as Iranian missiles and drones targeted sites linked to US interests across the region. US Central Command said 2 missiles fired toward Kuwait fell short or broke apart in flight, while 3 missiles heading for Bahrain were intercepted. Several other ballistic missiles aimed at regional targets also failed. CENTCOM said US forces downed Iranian drones targeting civilian ships in Gulf waters and American forces in Kuwait. It also carried out strikes on Iran's Qeshm Island near the Strait of Hormuz after what it described as attempted Iranian missile and drone attacks. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps said it had targeted the US 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, along with an airbase and helicopters in another regional country. The IRGC said the attacks were a response to a US strike on a communications tower south of Qeshm. The latest escalation lifted oil prices by more than 1% in early trading. It comes more than 3 months after the initial US and Israeli strikes on Iran, with the conflict still locked in a stalemate under a fragile ceasefire, and the Strait of Hormuz largely closed to maritime traffic. Although Washington and Tehran said last week they had reached a tentative agreement to end the war, the deal has not been finalized. Iranian media report there has been no contact with the United States for several days, while President Donald Trump says negotiations are continuing. The IRGC says its forces remain on the highest level of alert and insists Iran's military strength and control of the Strait of Hormuz remain intact.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard says it has targeted the US 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain in response to what Tehran describes as a US airstrike on a communications tower in Qeshm Island. The development comes as diplomatic efforts continue to seek a breakthrough in talks between Tehran and Washington. Tura Shireliu reports from Tehran.
Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said on Wednesday that it launched missile and drone strikes against the headquarters of the US 5th Fleet in Bahrain and a US military airbase in the Persian Gulf region. The IRGC said the attacks were carried out in response to what it described as a US airstrike on a telecommunications facility on Iran's Qeshm Island near the Strait of Hormuz late Tuesday. According to a statement carried by Iranian media, the IRGC also targeted a tanker it said was linked to the United States and Israel, describing the move as retaliation for an earlier attack on an Iranian tanker in the strategic waterway connecting the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. The latest exchange follows a series of incidents involving Iranian and US forces in the region, despite ongoing efforts to maintain a fragile ceasefire. On Monday, the IRGC Navy said it struck a cargo vessel after an Iranian freighter came under attack in the Sea of Oman. While Iranian military officials have repeatedly warned they would respond to attacks by targeting US military facilities in the region, diplomatic efforts have continued in parallel. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has held a number of calls with regional and international counterparts, including officials from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Belgium, France, Pakistan, Qatar, and Turkey, aimed at reducing tensions and supporting negotiations for a broader ceasefire agreement. Pakistani military chief Field Marshal Asim Munir has also been involved in mediation efforts, according to Iranian officials. Tura Shireliu reporting from downtown Tehran for A News.
Following a partial ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, representatives from both sides have met for talks in Washington. The meeting comes amid continued reports of hostilities between the neighbouring countries. Here's more.
Representatives from Lebanon and Israel met at the U.S. Department of State on Tuesday for the first session of a two-day round of negotiations. Following the meeting, the United States said progress had been made in the discussions. The talks come amid escalating tensions between the two neighbours who have been engaged in a 3-month war. Israel continued its attacks in southern Lebanon on Tuesday, but did not strike Beirut following a partial ceasefire agreement with the Iran-backed armed group Hezbollah. The Israeli military also said it had intercepted 2 projectiles fired into northern Israel. A Lebanese official said the talks in Washington would explore ways to strengthen the fragile ceasefire, possibly through a phased approach. According to the official, the discussions could lead to the establishment of pilot zones, geographic areas where hostilities would cease, Israeli troops would withdraw, and Lebanese soldiers would be deployed. Meanwhile, a United Nations peacekeeper vehicle convoy was seen near the Israel-Lebanon border on Tuesday, while an Israeli military presence remained in the area. The developments come after UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said peacekeepers would be needed in Lebanon after the current mission's mandate expires at the end of the year.
Ukrainian drones struck an oil terminal and a naval facility in Russia's St. Petersburg on Wednesday, hours before President Vladimir Putin's annual economic forum opened in the city. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the operation targeted military infrastructure in Kronstadt, home to parts of Russia's Baltic Fleet, as well as fuel facilities. Russian officials said the air defences shot down dozens of drones, while airport operations were temporarily disrupted and infrastructure was damaged in several districts. The Kremlin condemned the attack and said Russia would continue carrying out systemic strikes against Ukraine.
I'd like to remind you of the statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which said that our responses will be systematic in nature, and indeed they already are. That's the first point. As for the strikes specifically, information about them is entirely the prerogative of regional authorities and the Ministry of Defense. But generally speaking, I can say that the special military operation is ongoing, so that such strikes don't occur in the future.
There's been widespread outrage across the UK after police body cam footage emerged showing the final moments of 18-year-old Henry Nowak, with renewed scrutiny now focused on police conduct. Zainab Farajzadeh has the details.
The release of police body camera footage showing the final moments of 18-year-old Henry Nowak has sparked outrage across the UK and intensified scrutiny of police conduct. The video, released by Hampshire Police with their family's consent, shows officers speaking to another man before turning to Henry, who repeatedly tells them, "I've been stabbed." Officers handcuff him and question his injuries, with one officer heard saying, "Don't think you have, mate." Henry's father says his son told officers he could not breathe multiple times before he died. The footage was released a day after Vikram Digwa was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 21 years for Henry's murder. Prosecutors said Digwa fatally stabbed the teenager with a 21-centimeter blade after falsely claiming he had been the victim of a racist attack. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said he felt sick after watching the footage and said there are serious questions for police to answer about their response. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has also condemned what she called the unacceptable violence and protests linked to the case, warning there can be no justification for hijacking this tragedy to stir up violence and disorder. The footage has triggered demonstrations in Southampton, where clashes broke out between protesters and riot police. 2 people have been arrested. Digwa's family have apologized to the Nowak family and said they are sorry for bringing the Sikh community into disrepute. As pressure mounts on police leaders, questions continue over how officers handled Henry Nowak's final moments and whether different decisions could have changed the outcome. Zainab Farajzadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Air traffic across Belgium was disrupted on Tuesday after controllers staged an unannounced walkout, forcing airlines to cancel all scheduled flights. Flights were suspended nationwide from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. local time. Brussels Airport said around 70 departing flights were cancelled, with a similar number of arrivals also affected. Airport officials said no flights were able to operate during the disruption, causing significant travel delays for passengers. China and the United Kingdom have pledged to deepen ties and strengthen high-level communication following landmark talks in Beijing, the latest sign of a significant revival in relations between the two countries. Here's more.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper held the 11th China-UK Strategic Dialogue in Beijing, pledging to deepen cooperation and advance a long-term, consistent, comprehensive strategic partnership. The strategic dialogue is a high-level regular dialogue mechanism established by the two governments in 2004. Speaking at the forum, Wang said that the consensus reached by the two leaders during British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's visit to Beijing earlier this year has set bilateral ties on a new course, with exchanges and cooperation across various sectors having resumed and gradually returning to a normal track. Wang also called on both sides to implement that consensus, uphold the positioning of China-UK ties as a long-term and consistent comprehensive strategic partnership, and promote a more practical and tangible results. On the economic front, Wang said that China's 15th five-year plan is not only China's domestic development blueprint, but also an opportunity for the rest of the world, noting that it is highly aligned with the UK's modern industrial strategy. The two sides also exchanged views on key international and regional issues, including the situations in Iran and Ukraine. Cooper is on a 3-day visit to China. Both sides pledged to enhance high-level exchanges and deepen cooperation amid what Wang described as a turbulent and uncertain global landscape. Manu Maktoum, A News, Beijing.
At least 21 people were killed on Wednesday after a fire tore through a hotel in South Delhi, one of the Indian capital's deadliest hotel blazes in recent years. The fire broke out in Malviya Nagar area, a neighbourhood popular with students and young professionals. Emergency crews rescued 47 people from the building. Officials say several others remain in a critical condition and are receiving treatment in hospital. Authorities are continuing to investigate the cause of the fire. El Niño is expected to make a strong return in the coming months, and global agencies are warning it could be one of the most powerful events in decades. As a natural climate pattern in the Pacific Ocean, it has the ability to disrupt weather systems worldwide, bringing extreme heat, droughts, floods and wildfires. With scientists now forecasting a high probability of its formation, concerns are growing about its impact on an already warming planet.
The United Nations has called on the world to prepare for the return of El Niño, warning it could be one of the strongest in decades. So what is El Niño? El Niño is a natural climate pattern that begins in the Pacific Ocean. Normally, trade winds push warm water towards Asia and Australia. During El Niño, those winds weaken, allowing warm water to spread eastwards and release extra heat into the atmosphere. Its opposite phase, La Niña, brings cooler conditions to parts of the Pacific. These climate shifts occur every 2 to 7 years and can influence weather patterns around the world, including temperatures, rainfall, and carbon dioxide levels. During El Niño, the risk of droughts, floods, wildfires, and extreme temperature increases. Parts of Australia and Southeast Asia often become hotter and drier, while flood risks can rise in parts of the Americas. The World Meteorological Organization says there is now an 80% chance El Niño will form before September, rising to 90% before November. Some scientists believe it could become an exceptionally strong event. And this time, it's arriving on a planet already warmed by climate change. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned that
El Niño is arriving on our doorstep in the coming months with 90% certainty. The world must treat it as the urgent climate warning it is.
Charles Leclerc will continue racing for Ferrari after signing a long-term contract extension with the Formula One giants ahead of the Monaco Grand Prix. The 28-year-old Frenchman has raced for Ferrari since 2019, winning 8 Grand Prix and becoming one of the team's most successful drivers. Leclerc has made 155 starts for Ferrari, more than any driver in the team's history, except 7-time world champion Michael Schumacher, and ranks second behind the German for pole positions. Ferrari did not reveal the length of the new deal, saying only that Leclerc will remain with the team for the coming seasons. A sea of red and white filled the streets of Istanbul as Turkey's national football team began its journey to the 2026 FIFA World Cup in the United States. Hundreds of supporters waving Turkish flags joined a convoy escorting the team bus to the airport, where players were greeted with flowers, a marching band and a celebratory send-off before departing on a private flight. Turkey returns to the World Cup for the first time in 22 years. The national team opens its Group D campaign against Australia on June 14th, with hosts the United States and Paraguay also awaiting in the stage. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll discuss the latest developments involving Israel, Lebanon, and growing tensions between Washington and Tel Aviv. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. New details have emerged of a reportedly tense conversation between US President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, amid growing concerns over Israel's military operations in Lebanon. According to reports, Trump warned Netanyahu that expanding strikes, particularly threats involving Beirut, risked further isolating Israel internationally, while also expressing frustration over what Washington reportedly views as disproportionate escalation. The developments come as negotiations involving Israeli and Lebanese officials continue in the United States, while France, Germany and Iran have all reacted strongly to the latest escalation in Lebanon. Let's bring in our guest now. Lamiz Jadid, a political analyst, joins us from Lisbon, Portugal. Lamiz, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, as we just went through in our report there, in our intro rather, reports suggest Trump was deeply frustrated with Netanyahu over Israel's actions in Lebanon. Now, it's very rare that tensions between Washington and Tel Aviv become visible publicly like this. How do you read this?
Indeed, we were really reassured from 3 providers of information in the White House that leaked this information about this call between 2 leaders, that Mr. Trump was absolutely very angry. And we could just read it as he knows information that's still to come and that's still to be seen. He knows that some kind of escalation is coming. And I think if we go in explaining widely now the picture, the political picture, and what's happening in both files in Lebanon and between Iran and America, we could understand really what kind also of information might be shown to Mr. Trump to be so angry against Netanyahu to this point.
Now, according to the reports, Trump believes Israel's recent actions have become disproportionate. What does that show us about how much escalation the US is willing to put up with before it draws the line?
You know, never any American president had really come to oblige Israel to do something that do not want to do. The thing that in Lebanon now, what's happening, it's relating two type of files or wars, both of them related to the negotiation between Iran and America. What we know absolutely that Mr. Trump is completely in race with time. He's under pressure. He wants to get some kind of agreement, especially that now in the Arab world, Eid happened and Hajj will happen very soon. So Saudi Arabia cannot really interfere in any if anything happens. He has a midterm election. He has also the 250 American National Day. He had lots of things to do, including also an economic crisis that is driving to the edge of the cliff, as we might know. So he needs really to find some kind of agreement before August, for example. He needs to bring the prices of oil and gas down by opening Hormuz. The other part of the story, of course, is the Israeli. Israel does not want, especially Mr. Netanyahu, to reach any kind of agreement. And he said it loudly. He said that a bad agreement is worse than any agreement. So the man is ready to go for no agreement at all, but not to get exactly what he wants from this negotiation between Iran and the United States. And what's his weapon here? It's by pressuring through the file of Lebanon. So he's going to go till the maximum to use this card, I think. And this card also, it's considered by the American to be a pressure card, as we might know by now. So I think everybody is trying to escalate in Lebanon. And I think Mr. Trump had gone through some information that Mr. Netanyahu might use some methods in Lebanon that's not been used before. Of course, the Iranians are in a different situation because they have their feet in cold water now. They see the benefits of putting hands on Strait of Hormuz, but also they have their own conditions of continuing any negotiation with America by linking the file of Lebanon so closely to any deal that might be developed with the American.
Mm-hmm. Now, and as far as Israel's carrying on in Lebanon, they initially justified military operations as necessary to push Hezbollah away from the border and establish a buffer zone in the south of the country. Now, if that's the stated objective, why are threats against Beirut itself now becoming central to the strategy?
You know, we've heard and we've read about some kind of agreement that hitting on Dahieh, we have some kind of ceasefire between the Israeli side hitting on southern of Beirut mainly, and the Hezbollah hitting on the northern of Israel. So this kind of bargaining between these two places, I think, might take us to move a little bit the conflict into the southern Lebanon, where the IDF is really locating now. So the Israelis are trying to protect their army there, and they might go for this agreement. The thing that Iran now will go for no agreement with the United States if there is no ceasefire and if there is no retreatment for the IDF from all Lebanese territory. And I think this equation is impossible to obtain right now.
And Trump reportedly warned Netanyahu that Israel risks becoming increasingly isolated internationally. France says nothing justifies the scale and persistence of Israeli operations in Lebanon, while Germany's urging restraint. Is Europe becoming more openly critical of Israel's regional strategy now?
No doubt that the war between Iran and the United States, and mainly the Hormuz Strait war, I could say, has changed the whole geopolitical view in the whole world, not only in the Middle East or Western Asia. And I think Europe is being touched as much as America as well. And as we know, the prices of oil is really getting higher. And maybe now the reserve is being used from oil or gas, but this could not be sustained for a longer time, and Europe is worried for a degradation that could happen quickly and fast with the economy. And I think this is the only motivation that could push the European with the United States to push on Israel now, or mainly on Mr. Netanyahu, who has a very strict policy regarding having what he wants with his government now. So I think, yes, everybody wants this war to stop in Lebanon.
And Israeli and Lebanese negotiations are reportedly underway in the US. How difficult is it to sustain, and how credible is this diplomacy while military escalation continues? What's your analysis? What do you think will come of these meetings?
There is an atmosphere of mistrust that is now accompanying any kind of negotiation with the United States. Let's not forget that they broke, or Mr. Trump broke his promises through 2 times of negotiation, and he went to attack. And this really pushed the Iranian side to not to believe anymore in any promise or any negotiations. So they go to the process, and as we say, they are preparing themselves for the worst. They don't hope for any kind of peace or deal, but anyway, they are doing it. Now, the latest negotiation process, it really broke because of the Israeli breaking the ceasefire agreement in the southern of Lebanon. And I think there will be, now as we notice, there will be no kind of deal except if we go for with all the files together, like we go for ceasefire, and then we could speak about the nuclear weapons, and then we could speak about other issues, open the Hormuz Strait, and other issues in the region. But Iran will not accept now any small deal that might take the whole region to the agreement after the war of 2006. They want some kind of final solutions. And I think nobody is ready yet to reach this final solution, except if something major happens that could really force parties to change some kind of their policies. Meanwhile, I cannot find any diplomatic or any agreeable solution, especially when some alerting notice comes from Pentagon to say that they've been detecting some kind of signals with their radars that it's the first time they know such signals. So it means some kind of new weapons being prepared in the region. Secondly, also, they speak about that Iran started to study so well the tactic of the United States since the beginning of this war, and then there are some also news about Iranian themselves admitting that they are improving.
Okay, we seem to have lost our guest there, so we'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Welcome back to A News, and now we turn to our regional stories. Baku Energy Week closes with a strong focus on how the energy sector is adapting to new technological and market realities. Across 3 days in Baku, discussions and deals highlighted both immediate infrastructure needs and longer-term shifts in global energy strategy. A News' Gutin Kojalieva reports.
Baku Energy Week 2026 comes to a close after 3 days of high-level discussions, negotiations and business engagement in Baku, bringing together policymakers, industry leaders and international investors around the future of energy. The final day has been marked by a strong focus on renewable energy and the practical challenges of the transition. Key discussions have focused on Azerbaijan's rooftop solar potential, with officials, international financial institutions and experts examining how to scale up solar generation and better integrate it into the wider power system.
There's additional potential and opportunity for Azerbaijan to use existing houses, so rooftops, to install energy. This means you don't have to use agricultural land, parks or other things. You can simply use what is already there. That comes with opportunities and challenges. One is to use, as I said, the existing area. The other one is how to bring that to the grid. We found about 9.2 gigawatt of potential in just 9 locations. So there is much more to come.
As the operator of Azerbaijan's electricity distribution network, Azerishig has undertaken a number of measures to support the integration of renewable energy sources, particularly rooftop solar systems, into the grid. This work is currently focused on the Karabakh and East Zangezur regions. In line with the requirements of a green energy zone, rooftop solar panels are already being installed there. Distribution networks are being modernized, protection systems are being upgraded, control systems are being improved, and the number of digital platforms is increasing.
Regarding the Azerbaijani renewable energy development, I would like to say that we divided it to phases. First phases will finish in the 2027. And the total capacity, how much Azerbaijan national grid can absorb, is at about up to 2 gigawatt. It's not just a figure, and this figure comes from the deep assessment, which is done by the U.S. company Tetra Tech and also Turkish company by the EPRA Consulting. And all of this 2 gigawatts, which includes solar and the wind project, is already booked by our investors.
Across the week, attention has remained on energy security, infrastructure development and evolving market dynamics. Sessions at the Baku Energy Forum and related platforms explored regional connectivity, investment trends and strategic export routes, including the Southern Gas Corridor, which continues to play a central role in regional supply diversification. One of the main outcomes of the event has been the signing of agreements and memoranda worth around $7.5 billion. The deals concluded during Baku Energy Week and the first Azerbaijan-U.S. economic dialogue involve Azerbaijan's Ministry of Economy and SOCAR alongside partners from United States, Turkey, France, Serbia and San Marino, covering energy, infrastructure, development and digital technologies. Investor interest throughout the week has spanned both traditional hydrocarbons and low-carbon solutions, alongside continued focus on key infrastructure such as TANAP and regional energy corridors. As Baku Energy Week concludes, it leaves behind a series of new partnerships and multi-billion-dollar agreements, reinforcing Azerbaijan's position as a key regional platform for energy cooperation, investment and dialogue on the future of the sector. Gülçin Hocalayeva, Abbas Hacıyev, A News.
Can artificial intelligence help unlock more oil from aging reservoirs? At Baku Energy Week, British Petroleum showcased how cutting-edge technologies are being used to boost recovery and extend the productivity of Azerbaijan's largest offshore oil field. Aytan Shukurova has more.
On the final day of Baku Energy Week at the Baku Expo Center, BP showcased how advanced technologies are being used to extend the productive life of the Azeri-Chirag Güneşli field, Azerbaijan's largest offshore oil asset. A key theme of the presentation was the management of natural production decline at major reservoirs. BP outlined how artificial intelligence, 4D seismic monitoring, advanced drilling technologies and reservoir optimization are being used to identify remaining oil resources and improve recovery from existing fields. The company demonstrated how AI-assisted seismic interpretation helps geologists and geophysicists process large volumes of subsurface data, improve seismic imaging and make more informed reservoir development decisions. BP also noted that it is cooperating with SOCAR and a local startup on the application of artificial intelligence in seismic data processing. The presentation also highlighted drilling and infrastructure technologies aimed at extending the value of existing assets. One example was mudline whipstock technology, which allows damaged or constrained well slots to be restored and reused. BP stated that 27 well slots have been restored across ACG to date, with the technology applied in 17 of them. Throughout the presentation, BP's central message was the technology, automation and data-driven decision-making are enabling more efficient reservoir management, helping identify and recover remaining oil resources and supporting the long-term productivity of the ACG field. Aytan Shukurova, Sohrab Shirinov, A News.
The treatment of minorities in India has long been a source of debate, both inside the country and far beyond its borders. Today in Baku, activists, academics and community representatives came together to revisit those concerns and to ask whether international attention is finally beginning to grow.
An international conference looking into India's alleged targeting of the ethnic minorities is currently underway here in Azerbaijan today. Organized by the Baku Initiative Group, the ongoing sessions are centering heavily on the transnational repression and the tragic 1984 Amritsar events.
1984, the first week of June, is very sacred to us because that's when the genocide happened, where the Indian government stormed our holiest shrine, the Golden Temple, Darbar Sahib, and attacked not only our place of worship, but also the Kartaka side, which is our political sovereign seat. For Sikhs across the diaspora, actually across all the world, even in Punjab itself, the battle still rages on. It's symbolic for us coming here, being able to connect with people who have gone through the similar genocide as we have.
It's the fact that thousands of individuals, pilgrims, mothers, fathers, children, the elderly, that went to the temple on that day just to commemorate the Shahidi of Guru Arjan Dev Ji, the fifth Guru of the Sikhs. That's all they went to do. But they were caught in the gunfire. They were killed. They were murdered. Innocent civilians who had nothing to do with politics. 40 years on, we haven't forgot that, and we want the world to know what happened to us. So it's about remembering, but it's also an opportunity for us to try and hold those account that were responsible for those atrocities.
The big takeaway from the discussion so far, organizers specifically highlighted the presence of Dalit community representatives. They are calling this a rare occasion where the community has joined an event here in Baku to speak out directly against systematic discriminations.
I'm a Sikh, so the Sikh genocide is very important, but I'm also a Dalit, which, if you know about the caste system, we're formerly called the untouchables. There's over 300 million of us that are in India, and they live under this very oppressive system that actually doesn't even give them basic human rights. So collectively working together, having a platform to actually talk about our histories, what we're dealing with now, and actually work together for a better future is really what we're working and what we're hoping to do.
We established initial contacts with the Dalit community this year, and next month we will publicly announce our joint projects. Furthermore, our memorandum with the International Sikh Federation will solidify our cooperation on an academic level.
But the room is actually packed with global voices. We are seeing prominent Sikh representatives who flew into room, the U.S., Canada, the UK, and across Europe. They are sitting down with human rights experts and direct victims of persecution to look at one main goal: how to keep this issue firmly on the radar of international organizations.
So one of the biggest things from this event that we're looking at is this solidarity, that we have been given an opportunity to speak here, to talk to politicians, to the media, to academia. So now we're looking at deepening that research, that historical research and academic research, and signing a memorandum of understanding between Baku Initiative Group and the Sikh Federation, along with working alongside the Azerbaijan government, who we met yesterday, and with the academia who we're meeting today, to figure out how deep does that tie go with the Sikh people in Azerbaijan. So we're on a tour of historical preservation as well. We don't have that in India. They're out to destroy our history. But in countries like Azerbaijan, we're being welcomed to preserve our history. So that's very heartwarming.
So as the conference continues throughout the day, the focus shifts to what happens next on the international stage and whether these diaspora groups can actually get the global backing they're looking for. That's all for now. This is Leila Rahimli with Zainal Hassanov for A News.
Turkey's foreign minister says US President Donald Trump is planning to attend next month's NATO summit in Ankara, potentially setting the stage for one of the most closely watched gatherings of the alliance in recent years. Adam Morrow reports from Istanbul.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has said that Ankara expects US President Donald Trump to attend the NATO Leaders Summit scheduled to take place in the Turkish capital in July. Speaking to Bloomberg Television on Tuesday, Fidan said that as far as Ankara knows, Trump plans to participate in the gathering. Fidan also noted that President Recep Tayyip Erdogan had spoken with Trump several times last month. During those conversations, Fidan said, the U.S. leader repeatedly indicated that he planned to travel to Ankara for the landmark summit. It is important to note, however, that Washington has not yet formally confirmed Trump's attendance through an official White House announcement. The Ankara summit is shaping up to be one of NATO's most important meetings in recent years, bringing together alliance leaders at a time of heightened geopolitical uncertainty. Key topics are expected to include support for Ukraine, defense spending targets, military readiness, defense industrial production, and NATO's long-term deterrence strategy. The summit will also be closely watched for signals about the future of U.S. engagement in NATO, especially given Trump's frequent criticisms of alliance members over defense spending. Addressing those concerns, Fidan said he sees no indication that Washington intends to leave the alliance, arguing that, despite Trump's political rhetoric, the United States remains committed to NATO. Turkey last hosted a NATO summit in Istanbul in 2004, making the upcoming gathering one of the country's most important diplomatic events in more than 2 decades. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
A delegation from the Afghanistan Chamber of Commerce and Investment has left for Uzbekistan to attend the second Termez International Dialogue, which opens on the 4th of June. The visit comes as trade between Afghanistan and Uzbekistan is growing sharply, with both sides looking to expand business, investment and regional transport links. Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
The Afghanistan Chamber of Commerce and Investment says its delegation will take part in the second Termez International Dialogue and hold separate business meetings with Uzbek officials and private sector representatives. The focus is expected to be trade, investment and regional economic cooperation, areas where Kabul and Tashkent have been moving closer. According to Uzbekistan's National Statistics Committee, Afghanistan was among Uzbekistan's top 10 trading partners in 2025, with bilateral trade recorded at around $1.7 billion. The relationship is largely driven by Uzbek exports to Afghanistan. Afghanistan imports food products, especially flour and wheat-based goods, as well as energy, fuel, electricity and industrial goods from Uzbekistan. Afghanistan is seeking alternative trade routes after repeated disruptions through Pakistan, making links with Central Asia, especially the Termez-Haratan corridor, increasingly important. The Termez Dialogue, launched in 2025, aims to connect Central and South Asia, with Afghanistan seen as a potential trade and transit bridge. This year's meeting runs from June 4 to 6 and will focus on connectivity, security, climate change and regional cooperation. So for Kabul, this trip is not just diplomatic. It is also about securing markets, transit routes and investment at a time when Afghanistan's regional trade pattern are changing. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll discuss Azerbaijan's evolving energy role and the broader geopolitical significance of Prime Minister Keir Starmer's remarks. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. We now shift our focus to a regional story for discussion. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has sent a message to the 31st Baku Energy Week, emphasising the United Kingdom's commitment to working alongside Azerbaijan on global energy transition and energy resilience. In his remarks, Starmer praised Azerbaijan's contribution to strengthening Europe's energy security, supporting Ukraine's energy resilience during the war, and beginning energy exports to Armenia, which he described as supporting long-term regional peace efforts. The comments underline Azerbaijan's growing strategic importance, not only as an energy producer and transit hub, but also as an increasingly significant geopolitical actor within the wider Eurasian landscape. Let's bring in our guest now, Hussein Sultanlı, advisor at the Center of Analysis of International Relations in Baku, Azerbaijan. Hussein, welcome to the program.
Hello, thank you for the invitation.
Now, Starmer specifically highlighted Azerbaijan's contribution to Europe's energy resilience. How important has Azerbaijan become within Europe's diversification strategy since the Ukraine war?
Undoubtedly, the Prime Minister's remarks are an important reinforcement of Azerbaijan's role. Azerbaijan's role, in fact, is developing and expanding so much that it's almost becoming, self-evident. Azerbaijan is an energy partner for various different actors, including European countries. The country exports gas to 16 different countries. 10 of those are EU member states. So I think this role is being amplified regularly, and in addition to just the supply of natural resources, Azerbaijan is consolidating its role as a sort of platform or hub, if you like, where energy cooperation formats are established, where the topic of energy, which is a very broad topic, is discussed. And I think the Baku Energy Week was another demonstration of this. With regards to the letter and what was addressed, I think it's first of all, I think it's an important reinforcement of UK-Azerbaijan relations. Azerbaijan views the United Kingdom as a fundamental partner across several spheres. But as you mentioned, it also demonstrates the country's growing geopolitical relevance, and energy coordination is becoming an increasingly important aspect of this. And the fact that that is recognized publicly by so many different actors is very significant.
Okay, now I want to come to what it implies as far as Azerbaijan-UK relations. Does this message, in your view, signal a broader strengthening, perhaps, of UK-Azerbaijan strategic relations beyond energy?
Definitely. I think this particular relationship has been experiencing a new sort of chapter, a new high, and this is visible across several different spheres. I think visits by UK officials, different UK officials to the country, are becoming more and more regular. I think towards the end of 2025, the UK's trade envoy for Central Asia and Azerbaijan visited Baku, and the agenda of the visit perhaps as broad as it has ever been. And concrete steps are being taken in the direction of broadening the agenda of the relationship. Energy is a fundamental element of this, because it dates back to the 1990s when Azerbaijan first gained independence. But I think as the years go by, the countries are demonstrating an openness and a willingness to cooperate in as many different spheres as possible, and the newly announced strategic partnership between the two countries will only strengthen this. And I think most importantly, the voicing of intention to work with Azerbaijan on various different platforms and occasions, such as the one we have been discussing by Prime Minister Starmer, is very important, because it demonstrates that the Azerbaijan-UK relationship is more than just a bilateral relationship. It is a bilateral relationship which has broader regional but also international ramifications.
Mm-hmm. And in the letter, Starmer specifically referenced Azerbaijan's energy exports to Armenia as supporting long-term peace. How symbolically important is that development for the South Caucasus region, and also the acknowledgement by Starmer in the letter?
Both of those factors are incredibly important. The first is important because it is a practical demonstration that the region is overcoming years and years of conflict, of deadlock, and of a lack of economic activity. The resumption or the beginning of such economic contacts is a fundamental step, because of the region is to complete this transformation, and if this transformation is to become a permanent one, economic activity will be essential for this, and also consistent economic activity. And there is hope that the first steps that have been taking place in recent months will turn into something that resembles more permanent economic contacts. And the second part, Prime Minister Starmer's voicing and acknowledgement, this is also very important, because as I mentioned, the UK is an increasingly important player in the South Caucasus. Its relationship with Azerbaijan has always been fundamental for both the country but also regional development. The UK's, let's say, upgrading of the South Caucasus, of the role of the South Caucasus in its own foreign policy portfolio is very important. And I think the fact that the Prime Minister addressed the Baku Energy Week and highlighted all these factors are, a vivid demonstration of this.
And Hussein, would you say we're increasingly seeing energy trade and connectivity presented as tools for regional stabilization and conflict reduction, perhaps in the South Caucasus?
Definitely, I think that's the case. That's the case, I think, primarily because these factors, they help countries build interdependence. They help countries build cooperation, which perhaps in previous decades or years was made impossible by conflict. And I think the South Caucasus has a great opportunity to serve as a model, let's say, as a regional model of how a small region with previous issues such as conflict and economic deadlock can actually transform through both local initiatives, but also the participation of external actors, can transform into something that resembles, a region based on cooperation. And I think energy and connectivity projects, which by the way are, increasing in number. We're regularly seeing new projects announced, and I think the Baku Energy Week was another step in this direction. I think those two areas, let's say, will definitely be vital if the region, is to transform this, is to complete this transformation that we're witnessing.
Hussein, that's all we have time for on the program. Thank you so much for joining us and for your analysis today.
Thank you.
And that's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for all the latest updates.